Hello everybody and welcome to another Findmypast Fridays Live. If you don't know, my name is Liam. I work in the customer support team at Findmypast, and of course it is always my pleasure to be here with you on another Friday afternoon. As well as myself, we also have the lovely Jen in the comments as well, so be sure to say hello to Jen as well. As usual, let us know where you're tuning in from today. How's the weather looking where you are? What's the week been like for you? What have you got planned for the weekend? Let us know how things are going for you. Nice to see a few familiar faces coming in. We have got Daphne from a cooler Somerset, UK. So it's a bit cooler in Dundee as well. 19 degrees, it's telling me on my computer. But as always, not entirely sure I believe that. But it's certainly been a lot more rubbish than it has been in the past couple of weeks. I feel like we had such a solid few weeks of sun that it's just gone properly downhill over the past few weeks, but it's dry today. That is about all I can ask for today. Andrew's from sunny in Lancashire at the moment. It was sunny in NBL this morning, but a few drops of rain after leaving my namesake place on the way home. So nice to see you being out and about. Linda from a wet and dismal Northern Ireland. So it's not wet and dismal in Dundee. It's a little bit brighter, as you can see by the fact that the sun is more or less cutting off my t-shirt. I look like a floating head here today, but as I say, it is dry for the time being anyway. Andrea from cloudy Stoke-on-Trent. Gina from dull and damp Lincolnshire. I'm glad I'm not alone here today. And I think Kim has put it absolutely perfectly weather-wise. A rather blah West Yorkshire. I think I'm going to start using that to describe the weather here as well. I think, as I say, sums up quite nicely, I think. We've got Christine coming in from a lovely Redondo Beach. Very nice. I'm sure it is much better over there than it is where we are here. Although I've been in a few meetings with Jen this week and I'm looking for a bit of sunshine and a bit of heat, but having spoken to her, she's got too much of it. I think it is way too hot over there for me at the moment. So I hope you are coping in the heat over there as well, Christine. Jerry from North Somerset, a little cooler and windy. Dawn in Albany, New York. We've got Indiana, Wexford, Cambridgeshire, Edinburgh, Watford. Good stuff. As I say this every single week, and I'm going to say it again. I'm probably going to say it every week, but it never ceases to amaze me the places that people are tuning in from here. Even just those last couple that I read out there: New York, Indiana, Wexford, Edinburgh, Watford. As I say, just amazing. All different time zones. Everybody tuning in to see me, of course. Nothing to do with Findmypast, nothing to do with new records. Everyone's here for me, of course, so I will tell myself. Rosie, thanks for a quick response for logging in. I thought I recognized the name. You know, you're more than welcome for your help there. I'm glad we got that sorted for you earlier. As I say, I thought the name sounded familiar, so I'm glad you're back up and running in time for the new records this week. And before we have a look at the new records, just to show you exactly what I was telling about Jen, 62 degrees Fahrenheit, 16 in Colorado, but getting up to 28 degrees, a lot cooler today. That is on a cool day. I don't think, I've been in Dundee for 5 years. I don't think I've ever seen 28 degrees in Dundee. So that's on a cool day, as I say. So you can imagine what the really hot days are like over there. And you also have to remember it is only, 9 o'clock in the morning over there at the moment or something, Jen. So as I say, fingers crossed it stays on the cooler side for you over the weekend. So we do, of course, have a question of the week. If I can find it, I will certainly put it on the screen. Where have I put it? Here we go. Question of the week: what would you like to see on Fridays live? So I don't know about the rest of the hosts, but sometimes when I'm sitting down to start preparing for a session like this, it can be a little bit daunting. There's so much available to cover, whether it's record sets, features of the website, areas of history, different things like that. So I thought I would put the ball in your court for a change. Is there anything you would like to see on Fridays live? Any areas you would like delved into a little bit more? Any record sets? I know we've had quite a few people from like the product and engineering side of things. Like we had Rose talking about the app, Chris and Adrian talking about the newspapers. Any features like that even you would like to see? Anything you would like more information on? Or as I say, even just something as simple as a record set that you might want us to talk about. So obviously cannot guarantee it will happen, but you will be helping me out a lot if you can provide us and myself with any suggestions on, as I say, things you would like to see on Fridays live, anything on there, because we're always looking for feedback, whether it is Fridays live, whether it is the website itself, anything like that. Always happy to take feedback. So let us know what you would like to see more of or less of as well. Do you want me to start hosting less sessions because you're sick of the site, Amy? Feel free to put that in the comments as well. I will not be offended. But before we get round to the questions there, we will have a look at the new records this week. And we have got 3 new additions this week, all very exciting in their own right. So let's have a look. So first of all, we have the Glasgow City Volunteers Anglo-Boer War, 1899 to 1902. They are transcription only. I think all 3 of the record sets are transcription only. I can maybe correct myself throughout this, but I'm pretty sure they're all transcription only. But these records are effectively when people from Scotland or when people from Glasgow were going to fight in the Boer War. They would have like a ceremony for them in Glasgow. There was like a dinner, speeches, different things. And as part of that ceremony, they were also given the Burgess of the City of Glasgow, which was effectively like a civic order, so to speak, quite a high up civic order. So as well as the date of that ceremony, the date that they were appointed, you will also see information like their first and last name, of course, their occupation, which as I was doing my prep for this, I realized sounded a little bit daft because they are military records, but they're not all just soldiers or generals or anything. There are regular occupations, things they did before the war. You'll also get the address of the people, the company and regiment that they fought in as well. Now, I will just say that when I was looking for examples of this, not all of them have the regiment, I knew I was going to get this wrong, one way or another. Either they don't all have the company or either they don't all have the regiment, but they all have the opposite, vice versa. As I say, I looked this up 15 minutes ago and I already can't remember which way round it is. But when you're searching them, you will see for yourself because they are both appearing on the search results page. And to give you an idea as to what these records actually look like, this is a record of one David Simpson Carson. You can see the event date that I mentioned there being the 1st of February 1900. And as I say, occupation, David Simpson Carson was an accountant, although obviously now is going off to fight in the war. You've got his address, and then on the right-hand side is where you will see the military information. He was in the 1st Volunteer Service Company, Highland Light Infantry. So it's something a little bit different when it comes to military records as well. It's not your usual service record or dispatch or something. As I say, something a little bit different, something quite interesting, definitely, as far as military records go. So that is the first new addition. The next new addition is quite a large update to an existing record set online. You will probably have seen the Greater London Burial Index if you have ancestors in the London area. And very exciting this week, we have over 236,000 new records added to this collection. And they include the places that are on the list there, like Battersea, Camberwell, Enfield, Tooting, City of London. They are transcription only, as I mentioned, but some really nice information on them as well. I'll show you an example in a second here as well. I would just like to point out that for some reason, whatever the service we use to go live here always plays havoc with my slides. That was a very nice aligned list of places before I went live here today, but as soon as I've uploaded it, they've knocked things off a little bit. So just wanted to point out that it's not my error. I promise it looked very nice on PowerPoint. But as I say, here is one of the examples of that record. This is the burial of one Judith Abraham on the 21st of September 1702. And that relationship field is the extra information that I was talking about that you don't always see. That says that she was John Ketcherside's aunt. So it's a little bit different of our relationship as well. Usually, typically, you might see wife of or mother to example, but the aunt side of things is very interesting. And there are obviously the other side of things where it is wife and husband, mother, father, son, etc. But as I say, I like that aunt example, something a little bit different. So that is the Greater London Burial Index. And the last of the additions this week is a new record set, the Shoreditch Settlement Examinations, 1758 to 1802. They are transcription only as well. I was right, they all 3 are transcription only. Almost 11,000 transcriptions in this collection. Not entirely sure why I've told you that they cover 1758 to 1802. I guess that's kind of implied in the title of the record set, but just in case you missed it the first time, those are the years which are available. And in case you don't know what these records actually are, because I certainly didn't until I seen they'd been added to the website, this is effectively like a questionnaire that was taken. So when someone had previously been in the workhouse or benefited from poor law, for example, then they were moving to a new parish. This questionnaire was taken just to find out a little bit more about the person, find out about their history, where they'd come from, etc. So when they moved to that parish, any benefits like that would have become the responsibility of the parish. So they just want to know a little bit more about who was coming to the area, for example. Now, one thing I noticed when I was looking through these records is that you can actually start building up your own, almost like a census record. Obviously, as I say, they're 1758 to 1802, so at the very least 40 years before the first full census that we have online. But when you're looking at the records, as I say, you can sort of build your own little picture. So, for example, when I was first having a look through the records, I noticed this name Ackeray coming up, which is not a name that I'd come across before. So it jumped out at me the fact that there were 5 individuals with the last surname, especially the 4 of them with the same place of origin. Now, this would, of course, need further investigation to see if this is a family group, if they are all related. But when it's a surname like that and it's all the same year, all the same place of origin, there's certainly a good chance that you are looking at a family. And then when you start opening up the transcriptions themselves, this was the one for James Ackeray. So the field to point your attention to is the relationship to subject of examination on the left-hand side there. So James is the subject of the examination. It's him himself that they are looking into. But if we are going off the assumption that all of these Ackeраys are related, then you will see different things on the different records for the family. And there are also different bits of information that can be gleaned from their own individual records as well. So as I say, that is James, who is the subject of the examination. But then if we go on to John Ackeray, he is listed as the grandfather of the relationship to the subject of examination. So we could assume that John is the grandfather of James. And some of the extra information that I mentioned there was things like the description and notes period as well. So you can see that the description says that John Ackeray was an innkeeper, and the notes say that he rented and occupied a public house. So although we didn't get that information on John's record, as I say, you could almost start building up your own little census record from 1793. If you take it as James being the subject, that's, you could maybe make him like the head of the house, for example. And then for his grandfather, you're getting information like occupation, for example, which is the kind of thing that you would appear on a census record. As I say, this is me entirely going off the assumption that Ackeray is maybe an unusual surname, certainly the first I'd come across it. So I'm going off the assumption that all these people are related. As I say, do not take that as gospel. If anybody wants to look into that for me, more than welcome to. But as I say, just an idea. If you are looking for an individual in these records, I would also recommend just searching for the surname and seeing if there is any matches, any potential relations in there as well. And of course, it's not just the new records that we have. We also have quite a few new titles and updated titles in terms of the newspapers. So new titles, a lot of years covered here. North Devon, I was going to say Adventure for some reason there. North Devon Advertiser, Sidmouth Observer, Southern Weekly News, and the Yarmouth Gazette and North Norfolk Constitutionalist, which is a bit of a mouthful. I must have said that about 10 times. It was like a red lorry, yellow lorry situation for me. I just couldn't get the North Norfolk out. You could probably see the emphasis I was putting on that as I tried to stumble through that. Bit of a mouthful, as I say, but a lot of years covered for those ones, and a nice few updated titles as well. We've got things like the Croydon Express, Farnham Mail, Huddersfield and Homeful. How did I get through North Norfolk and I couldn't get through Homeforth? Homeforth Examiner, South London Observer, and the Belfast Weekly Examiner as well. So a lot of new titles, a lot of updated titles as well, and a nice selection of years as well. You've got some nice early ones from the late 1900s going into the 1970s, 1980s as well. So plenty to get stuck into over the weekend there for you too. And that wraps up the new records section of the show today. One thing I would also just like to mention is that I'm putting a ban to the H word, you know, the thing you get when you've got allergies. We're not saying the H word on Facebook Live anymore. Anytime I've mentioned it, I've always stung myself and I've always been full of it the next day. I've already had one day this week where I've been full of it and really struggling. So as I say, no mention of the H word for any Friday Live that I'm on from here on out. Anytime I mention it at all, even. I was in a meeting with my manager the other day. She asked how that had been. And I said, yeah, I've been good. I've not had it for a while. Lo and behold, the next day was when I got stung with it. So as I say, just putting it out there, PSA, no mention of the H word, the allergies word this week or any week moving forward. So we will have a look at some question of the week answers, because there's been quite a few of them coming in on the website here. So very, very nice to see. Let's have a look and see what we have. So Daphne would like to see more how-to content. So very good. We'll certainly have a look at the how-to stuff. The how-to stuff is really good as well, because as much as the people viewing learn something, I also tend to learn quite a lot from the how-to, even things that I know how to do on the website, and it's almost like second nature to me at this point. Just breaking it down step by step and thinking, how am I going to explain this? I feel like I learn so much more about that, and just that conscious thinking, as I say, especially, you know, when something is like second nature to you, for example, but breaking it down gives you a better understanding of it as well. So definitely something that we can add to the list. Jean, being cut off a little bit here, but Jean would like to see hints and tips on finding records. For example, I would like to see hints on finding documents that you know should be there, but by using the usual variants on names, dates of birth, or even going into advanced doesn't find what you're looking for. She's given the example of Ada Mary Whitley Brereton Nee Close in 1908, and her husband Edward were living at the same address as Ada's parents and her sister Miriam and her husband. And I think the message has sadly been cut off here, Jean. I do apologise. I only can see up to as far as it shows on the screen, but I do apologise. But point taken, much like the Daphne's comment on how to find records, and just some little search tips, hints and tips would definitely be something which would be good as well. And again, something which helps me kind of learn more about it as well when I'm thinking about different angles to come at things for it as well. So definitely worth a look. And if you aren't already in the forum, Jean, I would definitely recommend maybe posting that in the forum, and I'm sure some of the very helpful, very knowledgeable people in there will be more than happy to have a look at that for you. What else have we got? A lot of suggestions coming in this week as well. Very, very nice. Let's see. Christine has Cornish miners who immigrated to Australia. Would love to learn more about records from down under. Very nice. So that is not something I will be undertaking. I've never ventured into the Australian records myself, I don't think. So I'm sure there's someone within the company, or maybe someone knows someone who is much more knowledgeable on that subject than me. Because it's, yeah, definitely something I would like to see as well, because doing these Friday Live and doing little bits of research here and there, I definitely delve into more places. But Australia hasn't come up in my research or any of the research that I've done, unfortunately. So I would definitely, as I say, I would definitely like to see that as well. So as I say, I'm sure we can find someone who is capable of doing that. And Jen has very helpfully just messaged me the rest of Jean's message. So I will pick this up. So it says, but it appears in the ... 1939 register that they have split the three families, although at the same address. So there should be three records, but can only find two. I can clearly see their names on the original entry. So quite a curious case, that, Jean, as well. So we could definitely have a look into that as well. As I said at the start, I work in the customer support team. So even if you wanted to ping us the details in customer support, we'd be more than happy to have a look at those records and see if we can help with anything, and also speak to our colleagues in the data team if need be to see if there is anything, as I say, we can help with, if we are able to find them, or what needs to be done there. If you would like to do so, or in fact anyone has any other queries that I can help with, or my colleagues in this customer support team, we can be contacted on support@findmypast.com. And Rosie will tell you, very helpful guy, me, helped her out earlier on. So fingers crossed we can do something for you in that regard. As I say, do let us know in Jean's query, or as I say, if anyone else is struggling with anything, we can definitely help with some suggestions. got so many answers coming in for this one, so I will read a couple more out and then we will come back to more in the rest of the session. Jenny would like to see a more in-depth demonstration of the newspaper searches, as I can't get anywhere with them at the moment. So definitely, I'm not sure if you were in the session, Jenny, but when, I'm pretty sure you were, sure the name sounds familiar, but when my colleagues Chris and Adrian were on, they gave a lot of really good information about the newspaper search and different hints and tips for finding what you're looking for. That will be available for watchback on the Facebook channel and on YouTube as well, so you can kind of pause it as you're going along, make some notes, do your searches alongside that as well. But I know Chris and Adrian very much enjoyed their time on Facebook Live, so I'm sure if they're watching and see your comment, they will already be planning their next appearance and be keen to come back on. So I'm sure we can have a look at that for you. And a couple more, as I say. What have we got? Matthew saying he would like to how to research interpret records. Sessions on subjects such as manorial records, probate records, etc. would be useful. Yeah, very much so. Again, much like I was saying about Australia, probate records isn't something I've delved too far into myself. I don't seem to be able to find any of my ancestors in them, so I've never had much of a chance to fully utilize them. So as I say, definitely something that I would like to see more of myself. And again, I would learn a lot from too. And we'll go for one more for now and then come back to the rest of them. Kim would like to see more brick wall sessions, specialized subject guests, maybe a This Week in History slot. Very nice. I really like that This Week in History slot. That's a really, really good idea. I do have a calendar that I downloaded ages ago as an Excel spreadsheet, which is called like Anniversaries Calendar or something. And it just has the month and different dates, different events that might have happened throughout history, because I used to use that quite a lot for segments or for questions of the week, even if I could take some inspiration for that. So I definitely like that This Week in History slot idea. That is probably one I will be stealing, Kim. So definitely keep your eyes peeled for my next session. I may well have stolen that for you. Let's see. So we'll have a look, because when I do those questions, I miss the live questions. So let's have a look and see. See, it's not just me that's saying this. Jen agrees. Our team is the absolute best. And if I'm being selfish, we are definitely the best. So as I say, it's not just me. Jen agrees. Let's have a look. Jenny saying she did see the newspaper segment, but not sure how to find it again. So if you go on to YouTube, you will be able to find it there's a stream section, or is live, it says on there, and that is where the previous live streams will be. I could maybe even find it for you if I've got the right one here. No, that's just me guessing flags, but it's definitely out there somewhere. Jen might have it for you. Jen already has it for you. Here's me scrolling YouTube, reliving my past glory when I was getting everyone to guess flags, and it's already in the comments. So that's why you pay attention. Don't take your eyes off the ball. Pay attention. Let's have a look and see what else I probably missed when I was scrolling through YouTube there. Let's see. And yeah, Joe giving a tip as well as to how to find any others that you want. For example, you maybe just heard me talking about my flag quiz and wondered, what was that? That sounds fantastic. I'd love to watch Liam do a quiz about flags. That is how you can find it as well. Under the events on Findmypast Facebook, you will find any previous sessions, whether you missed them or there's any little hints and tips that you might want to go back to and have a further delve into. Good stuff. So I do have another little section after this, but before we go any further, I would just like to draw your attention to a very exciting event, which is coming up soon-ish, September, quite soon. Sooner than you think it's going to be. It's already less than 2 months away, so it is coming round very quickly. But this is, so you may remember last year, Jen, 2 years ago, Savoy? 2 years? 1 year. I can see Jen in the bottom. I'm not just signaling to myself here. I can see Jen. Last year, we did a Heritage Open Day event at the lovely Savoy Hotel in London, and some of you were there as well. Daphne, I'm sure, was there. Victoria was there as well. Pickles was there. So they could all vouch for how brilliant a day that was, how lovely people like myself and Jen are in person. We don't just put this act on because we're on Fridays Live. We're like this in real life too. And we did some research about the Savoy, some research for people who were in attendance, a lot of different things going on in the day. Obviously, we got lunch at the Savoy as well, which was a personal highlight, but other things went on during the day as well. And we are doing another one of these this year. This one is at Quarry Bank Mill. It's a National Trust site in Wilmslow, and you can apply to be there as well. Jen has a link which she is going to put in the chat, which will take you to the Heritage Open Days website, where you can find out more about that and also apply to be there in person as well. So another very exciting event. I will be there as well on the Sunday. So if you're only coming one of the days, make it the Sunday. You can see myself. Jen will be there both days, as well as a lot of very interesting, very cool people from the team. Mostly I'm just excited because Jen is coming to the UK again. Very exciting part for me. Seeing the National Trust site, seeing the lovely customers in person, that's a bonus. But getting together people like Jen, who I don't get to see very often. I'm stuck up in Dundee. I'm the only one here in Dundee. Even Ellie deserted me in Dundee. She's moved out of Dundee as well. So it's just me. So anytime I can get south of the border and meet up with everyone is always a very good chance for me. And good to see that Andrea has already entered. Lovely, Andrea. Fingers crossed for you. And Andrew making a good point. It is close to Manchester Airport. So not just the UK. Maybe you could fly in from overseas. I was talking earlier about how I like people from New York and Colorado, California, Wexford. Manchester Airport's not that far away, and it's pretty close. So maybe you can all apply. But as I say, it'd be lovely to see some of our community there again. I know we had a really good time in the Savoy last year, and nice to meet up with people from the community as well, because I speak to you at least once a month, if not more. But for a lot of people, you are just a tiny little profile picture on my screen when I put your comment on. So it was very nice to meet up with people in person and share some exciting stories and learn more about the Savoy and family research in general. So as I say, links are in the chat. Definitely have a look and see if that interests you, which I'm sure it will, because it's Findmypast, it's National Trust, Heritage Open Days. What is not to love there? So we will move on to my last segment here. Full disclosure, it is football related. I know some people are going to roll their eyes. Soccer related for you, Jen, and some people are going to roll their eyes, but it's newspaper related. A little bit of family research guides in there, and a nice little feature that's recently been added to the website, which you may not have used yet, but was a massive help to myself. So stay with me. As I say, it is very, very interesting. So Daphne's already rolling her eyes. I do apologize, Daphne. I'll be quick. I promise I'll be quick. So then I'll let you go. So this is, you may know that the FIFA Women's World Cup kicked off this week. I think it was yesterday, maybe. It's in Australia, so times are hard. But sometime this week, sometime over the past few days, the Women's World Cup kicked off. And just out of my own personal interest, I was having a look at sort of the history. It's in New Zealand, sorry. Embarrassed myself already. I'll definitely be quick now, Daphne. The words are flying out my mouth quicker and quicker now. Apologies to any New Zealanders or Australians watching for that mix-up. But yes, I was out of personal interest having a look at sort of the history of women's football, seeing like the history of it in this country, the history of it worldwide, where was the first World Cup, that sort of thing. So I was having a look at the history of the Women's World Cup specifically, and I was trying to see like when the first one was. So officially, the first Women's World Cup was in 1991, but I was finding these reports in the newspapers going back before then. So I thought something was kind of up, and there was actually an unofficial Women's World Cup in 1970. Well, I say unofficial, it was the first women's football tournament to be called a World Cup, but it wasn't FIFA World Cup as it is today. So it was unofficial, quote unquote. So I was having a look naturally in the newspapers to see what I could find about this Women's World Cup. And I found quite little articles, I should say. Maybe as no surprise, it wasn't very widely reported, unfortunately, the Women's World Cup. This is going back to 1970, and if you're not aware, then women's football in England specifically, and UK-wide, I'm pretty sure, was banned from, I think, 1920 to around about 1960, 1970. So maybe no surprise that unfortunately it wasn't very widely reported on. But even then, I was thinking about this earlier when I was looking at some more articles, that even in my lifetime, I can really only remember women's football starting to be widely reported on in the last sort of 10 years or so. Unfortunately, it's only quite recently that it's become a much bigger deal in terms of viewership of the World Cup, and obviously England with their Euro success as well. So as I say, it's maybe no surprise. And Beth raising a good question. If you are in the States or elsewhere, football is soccer. I'd had to clarify for that, Jen, as well. So this is the Soccer World Cup that we're talking about here today, not American football. So as I say, this was some research that I was doing into the Women's World Cup. So this is one of the first articles that I read about the Women's World Cup in 1970, the unofficial one, from the Torbay Express and South Devon Echo on the 1st of July. You can see it's World Cup soccer contest now for women. So this was the first Women's World Football Cup competitive opens in Italy this month, and the girls are training hard for it. So as I say, this was held in Italy in July in 1970. Italy seems to be somewhat progressive in terms of women's football, because that is where the European Federation of Female Football was actually established in Italy in 1969. So maybe they were a bit further ahead in terms of things like this than we were. So this was the first article that I read about it. There was just explaining the setup of the tournament. The big news, of course, being that the rules were the same, but they were enforced by male referees. I know we've got a lot better at that recently as well. You do see female referees in things like the Champions League and the Men's World Cup as well. So things have definitely gone on. And I started going through the newspapers to see what else was out there. And what I kind of started finding was that a lot of the articles being reported about this were in local titles more than anything. So if players came from a specific area, then those papers would be reporting because their local girls were going to the World Cup. For example, this one from the Coventry Evening Telegraph reporting on 3 girls from Nuneaton. And the thing that struck me about this, and probably thinking the same as you're reading it, is the ages of 2 of the girls. So Jill Stockley, 15, and Sue Knowles, 16, which is quite incredible. If you think about someone 15 or 16 years old competing at the highest level of any sport at a senior level like this is quite remarkable, especially a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old going to the World Cup. And it's not just those 2 as well. Some of the other reports mention other 15-year-olds, other 16-year-olds, which, as I say, even if you're watching like the Men's World Cup last year, for example, you can't imagine a 15-year-old boy running onto the pitch alongside your Messis, for example. So it was quite amazing thinking about that. But as I say, the Coventry Evening Telegraph did seem to be quite proud of the Nuneaton girls who were going to compete, especially Jill Stockley. She came up quite a lot in the newspapers, especially the Coventry Evening Telegraph, mostly for the fact that she actually scored one of the goals in the first game, I think it was. She scored the 3rd goal, which was a penalty against Germany. So how old am I? I'm 29. And I cannot imagine more pressure than taking a penalty at a World Cup knockout game. Imagine being 15 years old and stepping up to take a penalty in a World Cup. And I know you may be thinking that what were the attendances like? It might not be the proper ferocious football atmosphere. Well, some of the reports say that there were up to 40,000 people attending these games. I think the final was just about 40,000 people, and the knockout games were more or less the same as well. So you're 15 years old playing for England in a stadium in Italy, 40,000 people there stepping up to take a penalty. As I say, cannot imagine pressure like that. So that is quite incredible. As Jen says, her daughter is 14. Can you imagine your daughter stepping up to try and make it more relatable? Take a field goal at the Super Bowl. Then you can't really imagine, as I say, it's just pressure like I cannot believe. The pressure I feel when I click the go live button for one of these sessions is enough for me, let alone, as I say, a penalty at a World Cup. So incredible for a 15-year-old girl to be stepping up to do that. And Coventry Evening Telegraph, quite rightly, very proud of Jill and her achievements there. So because Jill was one who kept coming up in the research, I started having a look at other records for her, and I found her birth record. So this was Jill Stockley's birth record in 1954. But the birth record wasn't the interesting part of this. The interesting part was the search results page. So when I popped her name into the search results page, I found this nifty new feature that has been added. It hasn't really been spoken about before, so this is a bit of an exclusive for you there if you haven't noticed it already, but it's already proved very useful to me. So when you first carry out a search and you're viewing the results, there is a banner just above here as well, but also just underneath the results, you will also see results from our newspaper collection. So this is taking the name that you've entered into the search and carrying out a similar search in the newspapers to see what can be found. So especially helpful for me in this regard because the articles I was looking at were from the 1970 World Cup, whereas the articles that this was throwing up were from earlier than the World Cup. So I was already gleaming a lot more information than I had from my initial searches. And when I was coming up for articles about this Jill Stockley, sounds like quite a remarkable person because it wasn't just World Cup achievements. She was also quite the swimmer as well. This was a really interesting article I found that she swam in a school competition. I thought I had a year for this one, but I seem to have missed that out. I do apologize, but it was certainly pre-World Cup. She was still in school, swimming in a swimming competition, funnily enough. That's what you swim in. And she won a silver medal in a swimming competition. But the remarkable thing about this was that she was actually suffering from appendicitis at the time and says that she was in terrible pain throughout that, which neither her coach or teammate realized at the time until after the race. But as I say, winning a silver medal in a swimming competition with appendicitis is quite the achievement as well. So definitely something, as I say, pre-World Cup, but definitely it's quite the achievement nonetheless. And after the swim competition, I went back into the football side of things. That is what I set out to do. I tried to stay true and narrow this time, didn't go down too many rabbit holes, although obviously there were still a couple. And I did find this next article, and this is one which I was kind of contemplating as to whether or not I should show because it is definitely not the most comfortable of reading, but as we're here celebrating the history of women's football and the achievements of people like Jill Stockley and the upcoming or ongoing Women's World Cup and how far the game has come, I think it is also important to remember this side of things as well, that these sort of things happened, unfortunately. So this was a really awful event. We're in one of the games in Italy where after the game, the pitch was swarmed by Italian male fans who were grabbing at the girls, hugging them, trying to hug them, all sorts of things. As I say, really awful and, as I say, uncomfortable reading. It was not enjoyable reading for me to find this article. And as I say, I was certainly debating whether or not to put it in there. But as I say, I didn't want to just, women's football's amazing. Look how far women's football's come. This is how far women's football's come, as I say, from events like this, really awful stuff, to where we are now, where there's tens of thousands of people watching games. People are waking up at 7 o'clock in the morning to watch England play a Women's World Cup game, which is, as I say, you wouldn't even have heard of in the last 10 years. So definitely important to remember the negative side of things and how far not only women's football, but people's view, or men's view of the game, I should say, putting it more bluntly, has come. But I didn't want to leave this page on a sour note because, as Joe says in the comments, there are always rabbit holes, and the rabbit hole in this one came in the article very next to this here, which I very much enjoyed, having just read that awful article. This one was Dad Solves Cake Tin Emergency. 3-year-old Zoe Farndon put a cake tin on her head while playing and it stuck. Her mother, Kay, called the fire brigade. Who else are you going to phone when your child gets a biscuit tin stuck in their head? But minutes before they arrived, her father arrived home and managed to remove the tin. This was my favourite part about the article. Mrs. Farndon said, "I never realised this could happen. Other mothers should be aware." Which I kind of read as if it was the cake tin's fault for getting stuck in the child's head, like not the 3-year-old's fault for putting a cake tin on her head, for example. I just really like that there. So Christine in the comments asking, what is a cake tin? So it's just a reasonably sized metal tin that you would put a cake in after baking, for example. Just, as I say, probably about this sort of size. Nothing. Imagine a 3-year-old getting a tin stuck in her head, that sort of size there. So yeah, there's a more relatable reference for you than whatever I just tried to explain. Tin cookies come in at Christmas time, Christine. I was going to say biscuit tin, but then I know biscuits are different things in America, and you're picturing what I would call a scone. So it was going to be a whole thing. We could have been here for hours going round in circles. So yeah, a tin cookies come in at Christmas, that sort of size. So as I say, that was my pleasant rabbit hole. That was just, as I say, lightened the mood a little bit, having read that one there. But thankfully, that horrible experience in Italy did not put Jill off football as well. And here she is after the next World Cup the year later in Mexico. And this is a really nice article, much nice article about Jill sitting in her living room pictured with a bunch of gifts which were given to her by the Mexican fans. So a much more positive experience at the next World Cup in Mexico. Although that's off the pitch. On the pitch, it doesn't sound like that much more a positive experience. The article does go on to say about black eyes and bruised knees and everything. It sounds like quite a ferocious game back in the day. So, as I say, off the pitch, more positive. On the pitch, doesn't sound like she had a great time. Took a bit of a battering, unfortunately. But as I say, didn't put her off football. And I believe she went on to play for a number of years after that. And as I say, that was, 53 years ago now? And as I say, I think it's just amazing to think about how far women's football has come and where we are with it today. And I know, as I say, I apologize. I know everybody is not a football fan, but hopefully that was somewhat interesting for you anyways. It's a different angle on the women's game, a little bit of the history side of things. And maybe that's the This Week in History segment that people were asking for. Maybe I've loosely tied into that, but still found an excuse to talk about football. You never know. But as I say, just some research that I was doing this week that I thought I would share, and a reminder that when you're looking at searches, have a look at that found in the newspaper segment, because you never know what that's going to throw up that you may have missed, especially if, like me, you were doing searches with a specific year range as well. It will find things outside of that. So we'll have a look at the comments here. Heather raising a good point here. This was an angle I was going to take when I was going to talk about women's football, but Scotland didn't make the Women's World Cup. Typically, we don't make the World Cup in men's or women's football. Just part of my life now, unfortunately. But Heather raises a very good point that there was indeed a Scottish lass who won a winner's medal, but she had to play for an Italian team as there was nothing in the UK. Yet that was a woman called Rose Riley. She was born in Scotland, raised in Scotland, but played football in Italy because, as you say, sheer lack of women's football in Scotland. And she went on to play for the Italian national team and won that. So very good shout, Heather. Also, a really good pub in Glasgow called the Rose Riley. So maybe even if football isn't your thing, but you like a drink, connection there for you too. Rose Riley in the south side of Glasgow. Very, very good pub indeed. Have a look, see if I've missed anything else. Linda, prefer the cake thin story. I'm hoping that was just in relation to the article that was on that page and not my research in general, Linda. But yeah, good story nonetheless, that cake thin. I did like that to say. Sometimes it's good letting your eyes wander on a page because it does lighten the mood a little bit here as well. Nice to see I have been vindicated as well. Maybe half, I'll take 50% vindication here. It was in Australia, but also New Zealand. So as I say, half vindicated and still neglected New Zealand, but I was semi-right in saying Australia. So as I say, some vindication in there. Let's see. Kim saying the family story rumour involving football. My great-grandfather and his girlfriend once stormed the pitch of a Clapham O's game against Millwall, I think, in 1902. Very interesting. You'll definitely have to look at that one in the newspapers, although I know Millwall's reputation these days, hopefully it was a bit better back then and they got out unscathed. Let's see. And Joe saying that we are a football mad household. Glad to know I'm not alone here, Joe. I will certainly remember that. If next time I want to talk about football, I'll just remember that you'll be watching so I can get away with it. Because as long as one person likes it, that isn't me, I'm appealing to the audience. So very good. So thank you for all your comments there. We've got 15 minutes, so we'll have another look at some suggestions to see what else I should talk about, since I am not allowed to talk about football anymore. So I will see what else we can talk about in the next sessions. Where did I get to? We'll go back to Joe. So sources and how to research pre-1837. Yeah, a very good one as well. A lot of requests for the how-to content to come back. So definitely something I am guilty of neglecting in previous sessions. So I will definitely make a note to myself to get back into that sort of segment side of things as well. And Joe also suggestion that we do a Fridays Live social event where it's on Zoom or Teams. I really despise Teams, so I'm going to say on Zoom, pretend I didn't read that Teams comment, where we can see each other and chat. That would be absolutely brilliant, because as I said about the Savoy event last year, I was meeting these people for, it didn't feel like the first time, because like I was sitting having a chat with Victoria and I felt like I knew her, but I was obviously, like I say, it's just like how it is on screen at the moment, a tiny little Facebook profile picture with the comments. But I'm here every week just about, whether I'm hosting in the comments or just generally chatting. So it was really nice to have that kind of more informal chat side of things. So that is definitely a very good idea. We will be pinging that over to Ellie after the call. And Daphne saying that she would like more of a contextualization. Jen did a couple and they're super helpful. Unfortunately, I can't find them to re-watch. So might have to do some digging in those links we were sharing earlier about how to find the previous sessions on YouTube and Facebook. And of course, Jen is in the comments, so we will hold her accountable and make sure she knows to do more contextualization moving forward. There's so many good suggestions coming in here. I feel like I'm going to have no excuse for my last minute prep the next time I do one of these, because I've got so many good suggestions here. Rosie would like maybe something on how many people actually moved around the country or overseas in the 19th century, what sort of work they moved for. It's often the reason why ancestors can't be found, so where are they expected to be? A very good point as well, because if someone contacts customer support, or I'm speaking to someone in the comments, for example, and they say, I can't find person X after this date, I may suggest that maybe they moved overseas. But like you say, I couldn't tell you where they moved or what job they had may, like you say, quite often be directly related to where they moved. So that would definitely be a nice session on sort of travel migration and occupations included in that as well. And as I say, just so many good suggestions. Matthew would like more group brainstorming to break down brick walls. We could send topics in one week and look at them in following weeks. A very nice idea as well. I'm sure we could find time for that on a Fridays Live too. And that sort of ties into the how-to stuff that people have been looking for as well, whether it's us showing you how we found records or people in the comments are contributing and telling us how they found the records. Very good idea as well. And as I say, definitely connected to that too. Janet looking for records in the 1700s, also more brainstorming of brick walls, another shout for that. So that is definitely on the list to be considered in the future. Let's have a look. And a sort of similar angle as well. Jeff saying that you would like to ask a question in advance about someone and see if your experts agree, i.e. I have a possible bigamist in the family, but not sure. So yeah, that's similar to the brainstorming sessions as well, where sometimes just like you say, you can be sitting doing your family research, you find something, you've got your own ideas, but again, you're not really sure if that makes sense or if you're reading things correctly. So that's a very good idea. And like I said earlier as well, the Facebook forum is really good for things like that as well. If you maybe need another set of eyes on a topic or just get sort of confirmation of something, people in there are really good at that too. And we are already planning for Remembrance Week with Heather's suggestion that women who were conscripted, not in the military, e.g. musicians, land army, lumber mills, also the merchant navy for male ancestors. Another good shout, as I say, one on the list for when November rolls around. Last little couple here as well. Matthew is over on YouTube today, and he says the older the records we can look at, the better. Also regarding probate records, it would be interesting to look at the inventories and what they tell us. Definitely, as I said about the probate records, not something I've had real delve into myself. So anything more I can learn about that side of things, the better as well, and what I could find from that side about my family that I might be missing as well. Let's see. Beth asking what records Findmypast has on non-European records, e.g. Asia. I have a relative who supposedly died in Japan and need to find supporting documentation. So have I got a game for you, Beth? As I mentioned earlier on, I played a lovely game of where in the world is Findmypast, but that was more of an informal thing. I just put a flag on screen and then people guessed the country and I told you what records we had from that country. But a sort of deeper dive into those records, how to search them, what information they can hold, where else to get those records from, for example, would definitely be another good one as well. And let's see. Matthew, another shout for the older records. And again, that is something that I would benefit from too, because I think the earliest my tree goes to is sort of early-ish 1700s. So anything beyond that I could pick up tips on as well, I would definitely love to see too. Let's see. And we've got an update on the Millwall situation. Kim saying no mention of the great grandfather, but apparently Millwall players had to take shelter in the O's changing room. So must have been quite the storming of the pitch that they were doing there, Kim. As I disappointed there's nothing about your grandfather specifically in the newspapers. That would have been an interesting one to see. Let's have a look and see what else I've missed in here as well. The lighting in this room is so annoying. I seem to just disappear one time and then come back to life all of a sudden. Let's see. Beth asking if we will be in Northwest Wales. I'm sure Ellie would absolutely love to have a session in Northwest Wales. Nothing planned at the moment, as Jen says, but keep an eye. You never know what is going to come. I never thought I was going to be in the Savoy Hotel, so maybe this time next year I'll find myself in Northwest Wales. Who knows? You never know what next year or the future has. So as I say, definitely keep an eye on that. And as Jen says, keep an eye on your emails from Findmypast as well. And of course, sessions like this, the social media pages where we are always talking about the exciting things like that we are going on. Good stuff. So 8 minutes to 5, and I think we are just about time to go. If anyone has any last minute suggestions, I will definitely have to come back and read the comments to pick up on things and ideas for my next session, which I think is about a month away. So I've got plenty of time to recap the suggestions and get stuck in to the ideas that we all had, because as I say, there's some really, really good ones as well. So definitely keep an eye on future sessions, and I'm sure you will see some of your ideas come to life. But for now, as I say, I will let you all go and get on with your weekends. I hope the weather brightens up for us all, or dulls down, depending on where you are in the world. And we all have a really good weekend. As I say, I will be back on in about a month's time or so. But of course, we've got so many other great hosts for the time being, and I will chat to you all in the comments during those sessions. So for now, have a lovely weekend, everybody, and I will speak to you all very soon.